equipment. The governor was pushing, and then there was a court settlement, and we're left with no choice. And that's probably a good thing, because now not only are the Russians after our equipment, but the Chinese, the North Koreans, who knows who's trying to scam our election system and Facebook and whatever. But anyhow, we're having to look at new voting systems, and there's a number that are before us. And the way the system's going to work, if you haven't heard, we've had several public meetings. A number of league members have been in there for those meetings to look at equipment from 5 different vendors that we've picked. The federal government is looking at these vendors. The state government is looking at these vendors. And so by the time it gets to us, although we're still asking, and especially some of the public members are asking some very critical questions about election security and processing and all that, but a lot of the security issues are taken care of before it gets to us, and so we're kind of looking at it through more in terms of eyes of convenience, how we want to vote in this county, how we want to preserve our vote, and what works in a smaller rural setting, I guess is what you could say. And the decisions are going to be made actually not only by we as a Board of Commissioners, but also the Board of Elections, which is different because Preston and John are running for re-election. They can't serve on the election board for this entire year. So Diane Meixel is serving once again. I'm not sure, how many times have you done this, Diane?
Too many.
Too many.
But I've enjoyed every minute.
She's enjoyed every minute. Diane Meixel is back substituting for John Mathias, and Shar Gray is subbing for Preston. And the two of them, together with me, make a decision on recommending equipment to the 3 of us. We're the funders. So it's kind of a shared decision. And we're laboring over it because these machines all kind of look alike after a while. And it's a matter of who had the big gray garbage tub and who had the big red garbage tub that the ballots actually end up in. But the bottom line is going to be is, do we go with ballot marking devices or do we go with a paper ballot? We're going to have to go with a combination of them because the ballot marking devices we need for those in the community who need assistance in voting. But then the question remains, for most everyone at large, do they use that marking device to mark a piece of paper, or do you just do it with a pencil? And so that's what we're toying with now. There's probably going to be some public meetings, and I think we'd like to have more involvement as we go through this process. We do have some time. There's a number of counties that have made decisions already and are going forward. All the vendors that are coming before us appear to be more than able to meet rather quick turnarounds. And so I think till we get around to addressing this issue later in the state budget session, because I'd like to push this off a little bit to give our legislators more incentive to come up with some money to share in this pot of how we pay for this equipment. That might take us to June to make a decision, and I think we could conceivably be voting on new equipment this November, and if not in the primary, but again there'll be a role, I hope, for the League of Women Voters in that. That's happening now, whether we like it or not. Great Stream Commons goes around, comes around. When I was first appointed commissioner back in 2005, I was told that in addition to the decision Preston mentioned about, we had to build a jail, and that I was needed on board next week to make a jail decision. We had to do that. We had to buy the government center on 15th Street. There was an agreement pending. And then the other thing was there was a possible client coming to Great Streams. That happened to be Target. And, you know, it has sat idle all these years, and I think there are many days when the three of us have blessed our former board of commissioners that left us with a great streak. And, but, you know, we have to remember what that former board stopped. And that stopped us from becoming a home for a mega incinerator, and spared Gregg Township and Allenwood from once again becoming a dumping ground for the nation. And it left us with all these acreages, 460 acres or whatever it is, that is there for development. Then the recession hits and Target backs off, and not much has happened. And we went through a number of years that the only game in town seemed to be big box distribution centers like Target, which we weren't wild about. If you come from Union County, you like folks who do things with their hands and are creative. And so I think we always had a bias for manufacturing along the way. And here now, we're at a point where manufacturing is finally blossoming again in America. And we have acreage in Union County that can possibly be used for that. And it's rail served. And as the chair of the Joint Rail Authority for CEDACOG, I'm happy to say that we have some of the few available sites for rail served industry in Union County. Otherwise, I think Union County would have been high and dry, and we can't just live by building a new CVS and Giant alone. We need to provide some manufacturing opportunities. So although it's a source of great frustration, I think in ways it has been, maybe we've soil banked it for a while, because we have a lot of preserved ag lands, a lot of forests in the county, and there's not a lot of available space for industrial expansion here, but we do have that banked up in Allenwood. So I guess it's not a bad thing that continues to be here. The other point I'd like to mention comes around when I first got appointed commissioner. I went to meet with Sean McLaughlin, and I said, Sean, I'm really interested in this trail. Where's it at? And at that point, Mifflinburg and Lewisburg and East Buffalo interests were working on that trail together. Commissioners were kind of out of it because the owners of the railroad didn't like the commissioners, not us specifically. They didn't like county government in particular because they didn't feel they were supportive over the years of the railroad in the county. So thank God the BV Rec and its predecessor, Lara, and the Lewisburg Borough and East Buffalo Township, they stepped up to the plate. They created the trail. And I think Sean told me that last Friday afternoon, when that heat wave started to roll in, there were over 600 people recorded on the trail Friday afternoon at the Lewisburg Inn. That's a counter somewhere around Bull Run Crossing. And that really gets divided into probably 300 users. Because for some reason, Lewisburg people walk out and come back, Mifflinburg people walk out and go back. There's not that much total activity across the whole trail, at least in an evening. But the trail is being used, it's being loved, and the three of us found a way to make that work that relieved the Lewisburg taxpayers, the East Buffalo Township taxpayers, of the burden of providing for that trail. And the Union County taxpayers aren't doing it. It's being done with the hotel tax.